Hey, what's up internet? My name is Nikki and welcome back to my channel. It has been a really long time since I made a video, so I'm kind of excited to get back into it. I've been really wanting to do something a little more creative lately, so I figured I'll start talking more about books because basically my life is all about books. I'm gonna start off with the mid-year freakout tag because it has been now 7 months into this year and I have read over 105 books thus far, and so that's kind of insane to think about because I didn't think I read that many. So let's get into this tag. So first question is best books you've read so far. So everything that I'm gonna talk about are kind of like my favorite books that I've read thus far, but there's two books that kind of come to mind because ever since I've read them I kind of been telling people to read them. And so the first book is The Lost Village, and so this one is a translated book from Swedish. I kind of combined it with what's it called, Silent Hill, the video game, meets the Blair Witch Project. It's basically about like these filmmakers. They are trying to do like a Kickstarter, and so they want to get like really good shots and stuff to get people really excited for this documentary about a village that basically disappeared back in the 70s and nobody knows why. They've ended up finding like a baby in a church and a dead person in the middle of the town, and that's about anybody they found. And so the mystery behind it, they kind of want to know what's going on, so they go. And let's just say with the whole Silent Hill meets Blair Witch, you kind of already know it's not going to be a good time. The next book is Dead Silence. I loved this book so much. I am a big fan of the Alien franchise. Alien is one of my favorite movies. Those are one of the movies that I would sit down and watch. The premise of the story is you meet your main character who's currently in a site ward, and they're interrogating her because her cruise ship is kind of gone. She was in like in an escape pod and she's kind of like really crazy. So they want to know what happened because her crew is sort of like fixer-uppers in the future. So essentially there's spaceships that kind of do cargo, go back and forth, like airplanes. They fix the connectors, so it's sort of like a trail. So think of it more like airplanes, you know how they have like a set destination fly zones. If you've ever seen like videos of airplanes coming into airports, sort of like that idea. And they fix these connections. One day they're on a mission to fix a certain connection, and they find a SOS beacon. And the crazy part about this SOS beacon is it's coming in a dead zone, which nobody has explored. There's no reason to be out there, and they decide to go there and find a ghost ship that basically disappeared 20 years prior to Space Highway. And let's just say that they get greedy and not a lot of things go really well on this. So if you're really into sci-fi horror, highly recommend. One of my favorite reads. Gave me Alien/Ghost Ship vibes. If you've ever seen those two horror movies, highly recommend. Next question is best sequel you've read so far. So the first book is Out of Character. This is a popular book that I know. I've been selling it like crazy. It is the sequel to Convenient Yours, aka the True Color series. It's about a bunch of I guess friends who play this tabletop card game, and you get one of the characters from the first book who was like a side character who made everything funny. He was like the funny side character, and you kind of understand why he's like that because he got bullied back in high school, and he had a crush on this bully, and you find out this bully was actually his best friend growing up. And yeah, he wasn't like a fan when he came out, so it kind of just went downhill from there. But this bully decides that he kind of needs his help, and it goes from there. It was really sweet. I really liked it. I did actually like the sequel better than the first one. It kind of reads like you don't have to read the first one to understand the second one. You get like sneak peeks of what happened after the events of the first book, but it doesn't go into too much of a detail where you kind of need to know what happened in the first book, if that makes sense. The second one is Envy by Kiki Bruley. This is the Wolves of Resurrection Road. This is the last book of this whole series. It made me so sad. I did not want it to end. I was reading this back when she did her first series of these characters, and it's kind of crazy to think it's been like almost 5 years and we're done. I kind of don't want to let him go, but I kind of have to. This is the last book in part 3, so if you want to read this, you kind of have to go back a little bit to the the Walker County pack, and then the Royal Pain pack, and then the Wolves of Resurrection Road. And there's also the side quest of the demonic demon in that too, so it's a lot going on. Next question is new release books that you want to read this year, and the first one that comes to mind is The House Across the Lake by Riley Sager. I love Riley Sager. I have been reading his book since his debut book of Final Girls when it first came out, and I loved it. Granted, there are a few books where I'm kind of like, he could have done better. I'm so excited for this one, mainly for the main reason is because he put up a mood board of what his inspiration was, and it's Rear Window, and I love Rear Window as a horror movie. It is one of my favorite movies that has Jimmy Stewart in it, next to Harvey, which is not really a horror movie, so I'm not going to compare the two, so I'm kind of excited to read this. The next book is Go Hex Yourself. This book I'm kind of excited to read. I accidentally check this out from my library because for some reason I thought it was the sequel to the X-Hex because it gives that vibes, but it's not by the same person whatsoever. And so going into the X-Hex, most anticipated to be released in 2022 is the sequel to the X-Hex, The Kiss Curse. So this is the book that I thought I put on hold, was not, but I'm not going to like be upset about that because the other book looks really good and I'm kind of excited. And I'm also excited to read the Kiss Curse. The second one is Stephen King, Fairy Tale, which comes out in September 6th, before the sequel to the XX, so I'd be probably reading this first before I even read that. I'm kind of really excited for Fairy Tale. If you haven't already known, I'm a big Stephen King fan. I have no idea what Fairy Tale is. I heard someone say that we're kind of going back to the Dark Tower, so I don't know if we're going back to that series or more of his fantasy side of how he did Dark Tower, the Dragon Eye, stuff like that. So I don't know if we're gonna go high fantasy or Dark Tower where we're thrown into the fantasy world. So I'm kind of excited. Next question is biggest disappointment. So this makes me kind of sad because the first one is Goodnight Pun Pun. A lot of people at work have been raving about this, especially people who like manga. I was not a fan whatsoever. I think this was more of a me thing because most of the jokes in Goodnight Pun Pun, you follow like a 10-year-old kid and most of the jokes are so juvenile. They're like fart jokes, but just more mind-numbing to me. I was not a fan. Probably not gonna pick up the rest of the series. Was not my thing. Next was Deadly Collections. This one made me so sad to not like it because the premise of the book that got me was it's a transgender non-binary vampire that works in a museum categorizing books and literature, and I just couldn't get into it. I really couldn't. So this is a world where vampires exist. You follow one of our main characters who is a vampire who is just frustrated at the fact that when when they got turned, they were still transitioning, and they kind of got stuck in the in-between. And you kind of go through their struggle, and they ended up finding someone they connect with, and I just didn't care about the characters. I really didn't. I really wanted to just because I've never read a character like this, but it was just so boring for me. So if you do read it, let me know what you think. Next question is biggest surprise. So the first one is the Poppy War. I am not a big fan of high fantasy books, like when you have to build your own worlds and have to think about it, made up words, all this stuff. It kind of just goes over my head. Not a fan. I ended up reading the Poppy War in 2 days, which is kind of insane considering how thick this book is and how much information is thrown at you. I don't know when I'll get to the sequel, to the rest of the series, because there are 2 other books after this. It's a trilogy. The second book that was the biggest surprise is Slewfoot, which is not really I shouldn't say it was like the biggest surprise, but it was a surprise to me that I ended up liking this, because it took me a while to read this book, mainly because of the old English. It kind of reminded me of the 2015 movie Witch with Anna Taylor-Joy. If you've ever watched that horror movie, you kind of understand what I'm talking about. It's like really pilgrimage-y, that's a word, language. It was just kind of hard to get into, but Brom is a really great writer, so I should have not been so surprised, because I do like his books, and I do like the witchiness of it. Next question is new favorite author. So I have a few that I actually like. So the first one was Blake Crouch, and I really enjoyed The Dark Matter, and he does have another book coming out in July. I don't know if I'm gonna actually pick it up in July, but it is on my radar, so I might end up reading his other books first before this one, because he does have others books. I really did like Dark Matter. The funny thing about this, I did not mean to pick up this book at the library, because I accidentally thought it was Night Film, which is another book that I ended up reading too, and I am probably gonna read the rest of her books as well, just because, like I said, I thought for some reason Night Film was written by Blake Crouch, but it's not. So, and they do not have anything in common whatsoever, so I don't know how to confuse the two, but I'm notorious for doing that. Night Film is about a disgraced reporter that basically is trying to take down a very famous horror director, because it is known that he has been doing really crazy stuff, and that revolves around the cult. Highly recommend reading that. And then you have Dark Matter by Blake Crouch that has nothing to do with Night Film, and this one is about the multiverse, about a guy who essentially gets kidnapped by someone and sent to a different dimension where he never ended up marrying his wife. And so it's basically him trying to find his way back through the multiverse. And because of this book, I ended up reading the 22 Murders of Madison May by Max Berry. Same thing, new favorite author. Highly recommend this one too if you like multiverse things, sort of like what's it called? Doctor Strange. I'm pretty sure that's the reason why I picked up these two books, is because the Doctor Strange movie was coming out. I just had this urge to read multi-dimensional books. The 22 Murders of Madison May follows Madison May in different universes. There's a guy who's jumping through the multiverse and killing Madison May because he's obsessed with her. This guy, who's also a reporter, comes across these murders, wants to know why her, finds the killer, ends up ending up in another multi-dimension. The only difference between the 22 Murders of Madison May is in Madison May, you can't go back to your original timeline, while in Dark Matter you can. So that's what the next author that I really enjoy is Jennifer McMahon. I'm pretty sure that's how you pronounce it. I'm not 100% sure, so I'm sorry if I'm butchering it. I'm pretty sure someone's yelling at me for it. And the book I ended up reading this year is called The Children on the Hill. I am loving her writing style, especially in this book, because she does a retelling of Frankenstein, of who's actually the monster, the creator, or the so-called monster. And it was just phenomenal. I really did like it. I was kind of sad that I did actually figure out most of the plot twists, but the main ending I was not expecting. That was just so shocking. Okay, next question is new fictional crush. So I don't really believe I have any crushes out of the 105 books I read this year, but the only one I could think up is Eddie Munson from Stranger Things 4. Yeah, I love him. He's such a dork, a bad boy dork. And anyone who takes care of a man, Dustin, deserves to be loved. And I ended up just finishing Stranger Things part 2 of 4. Wait, what? Stranger Things season 4 part 2 I ended up finishing, and all I have to say is he deserved better, man. He deserved better. And also, I have to throw out Steve Harrington because I love Steve Harrington. I know a lot of people have been saying that he kind of got robbed this season, but he's literally the mom, and he deserves so much more than we can even imagine. And to prove that I love Steve Harrington so much, I actually ended up buying a rubber ducky of Steve Harrington. If you can see him in his little rubber duck, this is actually a bathtub. So yeah. Next question is a book that made you cry. So I am a book crier. I love reading books that will make me cry just because I have those days where I just want to cry, so I know these books will make me cry. These are books that I did not pick up intending to cry at, so I'm going to go with that. And I'm going to do it through frustration all the way to ugly crying that I was not prepared for because it gave me the first book is The Violence. This one is about a domestic abuse. It follows 3 generations of women during the shutdown. Instead of them having the virus in our world, it is actually a virus that actually makes you sort of angry and you zone out and kill people. Sort of like 28 Days Later, but instead of you turning into a zombie, you're not a zombie. It's just like this weird thing where you black out when you get really upset and you go on a murder spree until you're done killing that one person that for some reason you wanted to kill. So the next book is actually on my shelf, and that is The Darkness Outside Us. This book, I am so surprised, is actually a YA book. I cannot tell you why I cried because it's a big spoiler and a plot twist. It revolves around 2 astronauts. They are not considered astronauts in this world. They're actually cadets. They live in a world where there's 2 nations, one that's considered like the Russia of the world and the other one considered the US of the world. And basically the world is going to crap, and so they decide to combine their 2 best cadets to go to outer space to help colonize Mars, to help prepare the human race to basically aboard ship. So the next book is also on my shelf, and that is Crying in H Mart. I hardcore annotated this book because of sadness. This goes into emotional damage. Not so bad as the last book I have, but this memoir about a mother and daughter relationship, and just I kind of feel that as having like immigrant parents and then believing that your mom is always out to get you, but in truth she kind of wants you to do better than she did, especially that the fact that she came to a country that she didn't even know and she's trying to push you because that's what her mom kind of pushed her in. And yeah, highly recommend. The next one is Ugly Love by Colleen Hoover. I ugly cried, sobbed in this book. The plot twist, or the whole climax part of the whole relationship, of why that broke me. And I was crying, and I was chatting with my friends, and they thought I was crazy and they were laughing at me just because I was crying so much. It just hurt. It broke me so bad. I was not expecting to like Colleen Hoover whatsoever. I was kind of like pushed into it because we sell this book constantly at my job, so I kind of wanted to know what the hype was about, and the person who does romance was like, you have to read her, you're gonna like her. I do actually like romance, but most of my romance books, if you haven't already seen, are gay romance books, so I don't usually do straight romance. Don't know why. I'm pretty sure there's something psychological there. You can tell me in the comments, but for right now, all I know is that I enjoy more gay romance than I do straight romance. Ugly Love by Colleen Hoover surprised me because it had plot. You actually end up getting more about the side characters. There's actually side characters with backstories that you actually enjoy and not just there for comic relief. And yeah, it was just Ugly Love. was an ugly cry book. And I am definitely probably going to read the rest of her other books. Next question is a book that made you happy. So this one is really easy, and that has to be this one right here, and that is Under the Whispering Door by TJ Klune. Anything by TJ Klune makes me so happy. And this one, I also annotated all my favorite lines in this, because TJ Klune has a way of just basically word vomiting everywhere, and I'm like, that is my kind of character, because I am the same way. I feel like all these characters combined, and I love them, and this was such a pure book. I loved it. Next book that made me super happy is Yours Truly by Elvira. This is a memoir of Elvira's life, aka Cassandra Peterson. That is the actor who plays her. This book made me so happy because I grew up watching Elvira because I have older siblings, and my brother ended up always watching her like sort of shows. She didn't actually have a show, if anybody knows exactly who Elvira is. Elvira was sort of the announcer before you watch a movie, and especially like really bad like CD rated horror movies. And I used to watch her plus the Crypt Keeper afterwards, and yeah, and especially that special they had, I might have made this up, where Crypt Keeper meets Elvira. And the crazy thing too, that I didn't know until after I read her memoir, is the fact that she came up with the idea of Sabrina the Teenage Witch. The only difference is it wasn't as happy, family-go-lucky as the one that we got in the 90s. So it's kind of weird that there's an alternate universe where we have Elvira as our core memories of a form of Sabrina the Teenage Witch, where she plays an aunt, basically taking care of her niece. The next book that made me so happy is actually a manga, and that's Manly Appetite. So this one makes me so happy just because this guy fell in love with one of his coworkers, and this coworker does not like him whatsoever because he thinks he's a pretty boy. And that's the main reason why he likes him, is because he's the only person who treats him like a human being, and so he's like obsessed with him. And it's so cute because he's so innocent that he doesn't believe that he has a crush on him, even though he tells him constantly in the manga that he's in love with him. And so it's just like this funny, cute rom-com, just oblivious of being liked by the most popular person in the whole workplace. And so it just made me happy. Next question is most beautiful books you've bought. Okay, so I have a lot of beautiful books, but the ones I've actually bought this year has to be on this shelf specifically. So the first book that you see is Joe Hill, 20th Century Ghosts. I have to give this a shout out. It might not look like the prettiest book ever, but it's my prized possession that I got this year due to my work mom and my bestie, because it is a signed edition by Joe Hill. First edition signed. If you know anything about Joe Hill, he does not sign books whatsoever. And it also has The Black Phone, and also my favorite one of all time is Voluntary Committal. Highly recommend this book nonstop. It's actually renamed now to Black Phone and Other Short Stories. So the next one I'm going to show you is actually a series, and it is presented by the Horror Writer Association called The Haunted Library, and I am obsessed with these books. These are all gothic classics, just classics in general, horror books. And right here, Ghost Stories of Antiquity, I've actually read a short story from him, so I loved it. This one is about a rednecks who get terrorized by pigs. The Parasite, because this was before Sherlock Holmes. I'm not sure what this one is, but the next one, The Yellow King, is very popular. I heard really good stuff about it, so I'm kind of excited. And then the Gothic classics, I've read these and I love them, so I can't wait. And The Phantom of the Opera, I wouldn't have put it in horror, but it makes sense. Okay, and last question is, what do you want to read before 2022 ends? So that's kind of easy, just because these are books that I've had on my Goodreads that I've been reading and kind of pushed off for a while. And the first one is actually a trilogy, and that is a shady Hollow mystery series. So I have not finished this book. I've actually started it about like 2 months ago and I still haven't finished it. There's nothing bad with the book. I just lost interest. Sort of like I just wasn't in the mood. So I'm kind of excited to read it. So Shady Hollow is the first book, then A Cold Clay, and a Mirror Lake one. So this is an alternate universe where animals kind of are human, sort of like furries. I don't want to put it that way. That sounds really weird. But they're human, or humanoid creatures, humanoid animals, and there's no humans in this world. It's mostly animals. They talk, they have their own coffee shops, libraries, stuff like that. In Shady Hollow, there's a murder. Someone ends up drowning and they find out this drowning was not accidental. It was actually premeditated. So all these people are being accused of killing this person because this person has a track record of making a lot of people angry. So I'm kind of curious if it's different mysteries or if they're all connected to the first book. So, and also I love the covers. So that is it for my mid-year freakout. I hope you enjoyed it. If you're gonna read any of these books, let me know which one. If you have a recommendation out of any of these books that I suggested, like you're like, oh, if you like that one, you would definitely like this one kind of vibes, I'm all for it. I really enjoy horror and short stories, so if they are in either of those categories, I will take your recommendation. Until next time, I'll catch you later. Well, bam.